I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
It's finally here. After months and months of delays, Christopher Nolan's Tenet is finally hitting movie theaters, but not everywhere. As expected, theaters in New York and LA are still closed, and many are understandably still reluctant to return to the cinemas, making a serious appraisal of Christopher Nolan's film hard to do. And, in fairness to anyone watching this who doesn't have the opportunity to see it, this review of Tenet is going to be as spoiler-free as possible. Now, the way it's being released aside, it's not hard to see why Nolan refused to let this be issued on VOD, as it's a movie that's been built to be taken in on the biggest screen that you could find, with 70mm IMAX the best place possible to enjoy a movie like this, although those screens are fewer and farther between these days. Much of the film is opened up to the IMAX aspect ratio, so much in fact that one wonders why Nolan just didn't shoot the entire film this way. Visually, it's a stunner, with Hoyte van Hoytema's crystal clear 70mm photography an absolute joy to behold. Sonically is where people may struggle a little bit with Tenet. Like Nolan's other films, the sound mix here is aggressive, so much so that the opening action scene, where John David Washington's unnamed protagonist storms an opera under siege, feels like an assault. Anyone wondering whether Ludwig Göransson's score would live up to the standard set by Hans Zimmer can rest easy. This is a classic Nolan score. But the mixing on the dialogue is a very mixed bag. Many complained about dialogue not being clear on Interstellar, and at least where I saw Tenet, this problem has returned, with much of it bordering on undecipherable. While this could have been the theater I saw it in, which for the record was digital IMAX, others have also complained about this. My inkling is that Nolan had a very specific sound mix in mind for the film, and that any theater not perfectly calibrated to his specifications will botch the job. Now, missing dialogue in a movie like this is a problem, as the storyline is so intricate. Tenet is like a puzzle. Imagine a James Bond film backwards. That's Tenet for better or worse, and luckily, more often than not, it's for the better. Impeccably shot and staged, Nolan doesn't spoon-feed anything to the audience, making this almost overwhelming a watch at first glance. It's a movie that we'll have to watch numerous times in order to really get a handle on what's happening, and for that, and the charged environment it's being released in, we won't really be able to appreciate Tenet on its own merits until several years have passed and we've all gotten a chance to watch it numerous times. Somewhat in the mold of Inception, but not at all a sequel like some have theorized, Washington, as shown in the trailers, is a CIA agent recruited into a beyond top secret society who are on the case of weapons seemingly being sent from another time, whose physical properties are reversed. Bullets crafted this way are caught by guns rather than shot, and if you're caught in the crossfire, the result is pretty messy. So much so that you never actually see it because, well, this wouldn't have gotten its PG-13 if you did. Without giving too much away, yes, the film digs into time travel, and no less than the fate of the entire world is on the line here, with Washington a very no-nonsense super spy who tangles with the film's equivalent of a James Bond villain, Kenneth Branagh's Russian arms dealer. He's got a gorgeous, abused trophy wife, played by Elizabeth Debicki, who wants to be free of her spouse, putting her in league with Washington, while Robert Pattinson is a mysterious fixer whose endgame is always in question. The numerous action scenes in this movie are immense, and probably the most ambitious Nolan has ever tried to date. In terms of hand-to-hand combat, Tenet ups the ante compared to the Batman movies, while there's also a ton of firepower on display, much more so than there was even in Inception. The most jaw-dropping action sequence happens about midway through the film, involving a heist that's partially done in reverse, but I can't get into it much more than that. Indeed, any prolonged discussion of this movie's plot will have to be on hold until more people have seen it, but the film is certainly an epic in every way possible, from the 2.5-hour running time to the massive budget it obviously has. However, there are some issues that, for the moment, keep it from being top-tier Nolan alongside movies like The Dark Knight. For one, the story is frustrating, as you're bombarded with so much information that nothing becomes really clear until the film's conclusion, making it an occasionally frustrating watch, especially when much of the dialogue is muddled. Washington, who's excellent as the protagonist, still makes for a vague hero, but that's on purpose. We get no backstory on him at all, He's dissuaded early in the film from giving anything away by Clemens Posey's character, who's like his Q, and we never, ever learn a thing about him. Although then again, this is by design, because did we ever really learn much about James Bond in his films? Not really. Didn't stop him from becoming an icon, and make no mistake, James Bond is the model here, with Washington wearing elaborately tailored suits throughout, who even gets shamed by a cameoing Michael Caine for merely wearing Brooks Brothers. Washington should rocket to the top of everyone's A-list after this, because he has no problem at all carrying this massive budget action movie, and it's a shame that the conversation around the film is mostly and unavoidably about the way it's being released, as Washington more than deserves his moment. As expected, Robert Pattinson also steals scenes as Washington's wily de facto partner, very much in the mold of Tom Hardy's character in Inception, while Elizabeth Debicki adds gravitas and empathy to a role that could have been standard issue in a lesser action film. Here, she's a fully rounded character with motivations of her own. For his part, Kenneth Branagh chews the scenery as the larger-than-life baddie, but he also has moments of humanity which give the film an edge, while smaller parts are more interestingly cast than usual. We get a nearly unrecognizable Aaron Taylor Johnson, Dimple Kapadia as an arms dealer, and for my money, best of all, yesterday's Himesh Patel as Pattinson's wise-cracking associate, who kind of deserves a spin-off movie of his own. I love this guy. In the end, my first impression of Tenet is surprisingly mixed despite my unabashed love of all things Nolan, but I also strongly feel it's a movie that will improve immeasurably upon repeated viewings, where the plot becomes clearer and it could be appreciated on its own merits outside of the COVID-19 affected time we find ourselves stuck in the middle of. Right now, it's only an 8 on 10, which is on the low side for me as far as Nolan films go, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if 5 years down the road, we're all talking about how brilliant it is. A movie like Tenet plays the long game. For JOBLO.com, I'm Chris Bombre.